We are so happy we have Jamel Carlson in the studio with us.
It is so hard. Well, as a parents, the most painful thing to go through is to watch our kids struggle.
There's nothing worse.
I know. It's worse than if it happened to us.
Once you get past that pain bump, you really see that growth.
Yeah.
They say that grit and resilience outweighs education and status and all these things. Cringe.
Yeah, at first I'm like, I'm not cringe. What are you talking about? You have a great mom. Now I'm like, I wear that badge of honor. I am cringe.
I am not completely against it at all. I personally would do everything I can to avoid medication.
And I'm reading this book, Boys Should Be Boys, and I think I posted it on my stories. There's a whole chapter on the God factor and how even more than any other thing, they've had like big tests done, that knowing that there is a God above, a creator, is something that kids learn when they're young, is something that is more powerful than anything that they can have. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to talk about neuroplasticity and brain health today, and we are so happy we have Jamel Carlson in the studio with us. She is the director of the Foundation's Cognitive School, which is a program that works with students with common learning disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD, dysgraphia, and there's more. We'll talk about all of that. And what makes this school so unique is that the education therapy is based on neuroplasticity, and the focus is on the children's brain health. And so what many of the students are doing is that they're not just learning how to live with these disabilities, but they're strengthening the weaker parts of the brains that they're not typically using, and they're producing long-term change, which is incredible. And the statistics are, as Jamel has told me, 1 in 5 students in the United States is struggling with some type of learning or attention issue. So this is a big topic for a lot of parents and young people. So many people don't know that my oldest son, Preston, has been struggling with dyslexia, and he went through this type of therapy. And what's so amazing is I've seen a complete transformation in Preston. And not only is he reading and writing at grade level at a very highly academic school after being through this program, but he has also increased his confidence, his compassion. You can see the changes connecting with him on the football field, the basketball court. And just his demeanor, how he interacts with his parents and his brother. It's really incredible. And I just feel like many people think that there's a big stigma with dyslexia, and I think it's kind of a little bit of a superpower. There are so many incredible, talented and creative, even genius people that we'll talk about. Some of the famous people, and there's like Einstein. I just read that Lewis Howe and Tom Cruise, and I know we've talked about, there's tons of them. We'll talk about that more. But so we're just going to talk about the first things that parents can look for if they think their student is having some kind of trouble with attention in school or learning disability or writing or any of those things. And so we just want to help parents, and we really need to advocate for our children because nobody really else is if we're not. And I know I struggled with that. That was a big thing. So, the school system isn't going to do it. You got to do it. So, without further ado, Ms. Carlson, we're so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us.
Course,
we just feel like it's so important, both as mothers, and a mother yourself of 6 children. I just learned.
Yes.
I have 3 boys.
And I have 3 boys, and Lizzie has 2. And I think as a mother, like, there's nothing worse than seeing our child struggle. Mm-hmm. So if there's ways we can help mothers give them hope and their children hope, then we're so excited to be able to do that today with any of our followers and listeners. And so thank you for being here to help us guide them, give them hope, give them direction, and some different options.
Yeah, I totally, everything you're saying, I'm just so agreeing with. That's why I keep nodding, because it is so hard. Well, as a parents, the most painful thing to go through is to watch our kids struggle.
There's nothing worse.
I know. It's worse than if it happened to us.
Absolutely.
And I talk to so many parents where they're afraid for their kids' future, and they feel like, where did I go wrong?
That's what I was telling Lizzie before you got here. I said, well, I think one of the problems with parents of children with a lot of disorders or health issues, a lot of times the shame comes with did I do something wrong?
Right.
Did I cause this? Did I eat something when I was pregnant? Did
Right.
I, you know what I mean? Is it the stress I had while they were a baby, or maybe because I remember that time they fell off the changing table and bumped their head. There's just all
there's
these
so many.
things, and you know, so I know a girl that swears it's because she drank coffee and why her son had learning disabilities, and so we want to take away that shame and the stigma,
Right.
and we can't reverse anything in the past. Help people give ideas where it did, prevent it. Where does some of this come from? Maybe how can we prevent it? Or once it's here, how can we help them heal through this, get through it, give them hope, give them different avenues to navigate that process?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things that's most important is to not go to the shame direction, because like you said, that statistically, I mean, I think it's good to try to figure out why.
For people that go, okay, well, is there anything I can do to prevent it?
Yeah,
it's great.
there are things that you can do but the reality is, like you said, statistically, they say that there's 1 in 5 kids in the United States that is diagnosed with some kind of learning disability.
Well, and now autism is
on the rise, and I actually would argue that it's even more than 1 in 5.
autism is 1 in 3 from what I'm.
Exactly, the numbers are going up.
Which
That
is
1
a
in 5 was
wild number.
before COVID years.
I think 1 in 5 is learning disabilities in general, but I think autism is 1 in 3. And I could be wrong.
The
You're
numbers
the
are going up. Going up.
You're the expert,
But the most important thing is the fact that there is hope for change, and I think that parents need to understand that every single one of us has a very unique brain. I mean, you know that every brain is as unique as our fingerprints.
Right.
Yeah, and to compare, you want to not compare your kid to other kids. You know, we get into this thing where we have to try to fit them into the norm.
Right.
But we're all born with different strengths and weaknesses in our brains, and that's one of the main things that I preach to our students right when they start our program is you're not broken. Nothing is wrong with you. Like it's good to like try to understand, here's the general area of, where there are some weaknesses, but the reality is we don't have to settle. We can actually strengthen the weak areas of our brain, not just children, but us adults even,
Right.
And your son is a perfect example. He is highly intelligent, good kid, good heart. You guys did everything right. You did nothing wrong. He just had some areas of his brain that were weaker, and then what happens is, because of that, we start feeling shame, we start shutting down, your self-esteem suffers, and the reality is also that I feel that the field of education, it's kind of broken,
Right.
I struggle with our education system because it just fits into one box.
It's trying to get all these people with different brains.
There's different brains, and they learn differently.
Yeah, even kids who aren't diagnosed with learning challenges, how many kids in one classroom are going to really learn the same at the same pace? And so,
And I understand it. It's really hard to take each kid differently. I get that. Yeah. But it still seems like there's got to be something we can do to help each kid thrive a little bit better.
there totally is.
Well, you have to advocate, because if you don't, then because I was going in the classroom and I was like, he can't read, and the teachers are pushing him through. And they were,
Because they've got 30 kids to
right?
worry about.
So I had to get, the principal, the vice principal, the psychologist, their teacher to a press conference just to get the IEP, and that wasn't enough. So then I went to one outside program, the Johnson Academy, and then I went to all the schools to look for something. I mean, it was like a
lot of us did, but back in the day, we didn't know. Yeah, and we didn't know that you could change it. So then you just live with it, and you become an adult with those same issues, and you struggle in college and in your career, and that's the whole point of us developing foundation.
You probably just thought something was broken.
And I love how you said it becomes your superpower, because in a lot of ways you do learn how to work around it.
Right.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But what if you could change? We've had kids like Preston and other students come in where they're diagnosed with things like dyslexia, and they spend years. And basically the concept is what's different about foundations than traditional special education is that I believe there's a lot of good hearts in the field of special education. It's what I always knew I wanted to do when I was young. I was like, I'm going to fight for the underdog and help those kids that fall through the cracks. But then I was looking at that expertise, and I'm like, a lot of kids though don't change, and actually there's a lot of kids who go through special education and they drop out of school, or they finish and they can't succeed in college, or they end up in jail. Like there's a lot of bad statistics. So I'm like, something is wrong.
Bad.
Exactly.
Right.
Bad,
But maybe
lazy.
they weren't bad or lazy. Maybe their brain wasn't functioning.
Exactly. And then you shut down, you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So, so my business partner and I were like, we both had kids with learning challenges. This amazing family that I connected with, who became my partner in developing the school, they had 3 out of their 4 kids had learning challenges.
Wow.
They're amazing family and amazing kids, and they tried everything: public school, private schools, after school therapies, everything.
Summer programs that the kids hate.
Yeah.
They're like a summer. I want to play, but you're making me go to like a program.
I know. Well, then they're stuck in a school all day where they're failures, and then they go after school and have to do more things. So it's just exhausting, discouraging, cost all this money.
Right.
So we're like, what do we do that's different? And God definitely meant for our paths to cross, because Chuck, my business partner, had done a lot of research on cognitive development and neuroplasticity, and the fact that we can do these cognitive exercises to change our brain. I had a lot of expertise in the field of psychology, and I was realizing the self-esteem and the way the kids feel about themselves is as big of a factor. So we're like, if we could create the perfect school where the kids are getting all the things that they need in a school day, what would that look like?
Right.
And it's threefold. Part of it is psychology component. We do self-esteem exercises every single day, gratitude journals, help the kids believe the truth, which is that they're okay.
Yeah.
They're not broken.
They were
God
perfectly
created
made.
them.
Yes.
And it's okay. And it's okay to fail at things. And because you know how hard it is to feel like you're a failure. So then you stop wanting to even
Well, you
try.
get discouraged.
Right.
And then actually that's neuroplasticity. You continue on that path.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep doing
Right.
the same thing.
You believe what you
You're gonna
tell
keep
yourself.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're like, we need to help them
Right.
love themselves the way they should, so that they'll even try. Because you could be brilliant, but if you
Give up.
have low self-esteem and you won't even try, how many brilliant people do nothing? A lot.
true.
So we try to help these kids understand the truth about who they truly are, so that they'll put effort into brain exercises that focus on attention, memory, auditory processing, critical thinking skills. Because really, whatever label you give them, the learning challenges, I can tell you that almost always below that, there's some kind of issue with their memory, their brain speed. Something is going on that is causing them to have this label and causing these symptoms. So if you work and do brain exercises that increase your memory, brain speed, attention, critical thinking skills, all of a sudden those symptoms start to go away. And then you do academics at the level that they're truly at, as opposed to them trying to do academics that they can't do. That's a way above their level, feel like a failure, cause fights at home, doing homework.
Oh, yeah. Those fights.
You meet them where they're truly at without shame. Like who cares if you're a 7th grader doing 3rd grade math?
okay.
Let's start there.
Right.
And if you build the self-esteem, grow their brain, all of a sudden they can do like 3 years of math in a school year. This is the story of Preston.
Right. Yeah.
It was like we watched this flower blossom because he finally was in a classroom where he experienced success, and he learned that he could do hard things, and he all of a sudden could think a little sharper and
Right.
do things faster.
And he loves to read. He keeps chapter books on the side of his bed, and he just loves to read.
but he didn't
amazing.
before.
I
And he didn't want to
know.
write, and
That is a miracle.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It is. So I think one of the first things is that people, parents, what do they look for? Because sometimes kids you don't know. Are they struggling with school, reading, or math? Is it that? Are they slow? Are they just not very smart? Or is this a learning disability? Or is there something that I need to take action on? Because I think that's that first step is like a question that, I guess it was like first grade for me with Preston. And I'm like, well, maybe he's just a little behind. Then we go into 2nd grade and I'm like, he's really can't get this reading thing. He couldn't sound out the things. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to have to look into this a lot more. So what are the things that parents need to look for?
I think you just actually described it really well.
Okay.
I think usually in those earlier years, you'll start to see that they're not keeping up with some of the other kids, you know,
Right.
in the class. And usually in those younger years, the child doesn't maybe realize it as much.
Right.
They're just still happy and
They don't
still
know
want to
any
go to
different.
school.
Right.
Yeah, they may not know. Teachers might be starting to say they're not focusing like they should. Homework might start to become a struggle.
Right.
So you would start to notice those type of things. Then I would say there's usually some kind of emotional response, especially towards third, fourth grade. That's where I see that a lot, because now they start to realize something seems different. I feel like I'm not the same as the other kids.
Right.
And different kids, I feel like, show that in different ways emotionally. You have some kids who shut down, who looks, seems sad. And then you have other kids who maybe overcompensate in other ways. They become the class clown.
Right.
They start having behavior problems,
Right.
where they're getting mad at people because they don't feel good about themselves.
Right.
We talk about this all the time in our program with the kids.
Right.
Part of what we do is help them understand why they're having the response they have, and we empathize with them and help them know that that's okay too. Like, it is painful.
Right.
There is
Like, your
complete
feelings are valid.
Right.
Yeah.
and we talk about how to express those in healthier ways and to not let that cause you to shut down.
I need to go to this school. I'm just kidding.
I know.
A lot of parents will be like,
We could do that, right?
I feel like I need all of these skills, we all do.
No,
Right.
I tell the kids actually what they're learning.
I'm enrolling.
I know. I'm like, adults
Right.
can't communicate their feelings well or don't even understand what's going on.
I know I need to do gratitude in the morning, then exercise my memory and
Yes.
strengthen my brain, and then I
Right.
need to learn to emotionally regulate. I'm like,
Yeah.
where do I
We
sign
need
up?
all those things.
Gosh, that's what is so exciting.
And you there to tell me that it's okay, that
Right.
I'm beautiful.
You can do your gratitude journal every day.
I'm perfectly made by God designed me this way. And
Yes.
100%. I'll tell you, I can't even believe that this is my job every day, that I get to nurture these kids and do this stuff.
you're changing lives.
I get to
Right.
watch them blossom, and
Yeah.
obviously I wish I could keep them all forever. I miss
Yeah.
Preston, but how amazing is it for me to go through this with him,
fulfilling.
and then I get to hear the stories of, okay, he's been
Yeah.
gone for almost 3 years.
Right.
He's thriving. He's emotionally doing well.
he's
He's
doing great.
doing well. Well, his whole future.
Right.
Parents also, I'll add to what you're saying, but what do parents, you asked what they have to look for, but
Right.
what I want to say is what they need to think about is the long term.
Yeah.
Not just living with it.
Yeah.
How to help them.
Well, and that, if coming back to
their
special
future,
education, their
you know,
future.
like-
And that's what's broken about the field of special education. I believe it's out of love that people do this,
Right.
but they're putting a temporary fix.
Yeah. They're just
They're
putting them in a
loving them
separate
through
class,
school. Let's
get
just-
them
Right.
through,
Yeah.
and yeah.
It'd be like if you broke your leg and someone gave you a crutch, which at first that's awesome. But what if the thought was, now just your whole life,
You're
if
just
you
on a
walk with this
crutch.
crutch, it's going to be great.
Right.
But it's
when my leg
not.
could have been fixed.
Right.
Exactly. And you could have been running the marathon.
I could have been healed.
But
Right.
because you relied on the crutch the whole time, and the love was there, and here's the crutch. So you
They
can
wanted.
walk.
Right.
They didn't want me to be in pain
Yeah.
and see me
Exactly.
struggle, so they gave me a crutch.
Yeah.
Well, that was
But
one
then my
thing
leg. Yeah, that's
they
a
were
perfect example.
saying at the school that he was at. Well, we can medicate.
Right.
The
Right.
Adderall. Maybe
Yeah.
it's ADHD.
And I struggle with the
stuff
first
like
response
that.
to be medication.
Right.
With
Right.
people.
I'm like, no, that's not going to fix what's really going on here. So it
Right.
has to go deeper.
Yeah.
Parents will ask me, that's a big question parents ask, is what I feel about medication. I am not completely against it at all. I personally would do everything I can to avoid medication. It's what I do in my own life, my kids' lives, and what I
Right.
recommend to the families. And I believe that a lot of things can be resolved and healed without it. But I do think there
agree.
are times in life, like, for example, if you struggle with severe depression,
Right.
you might need
It helps you get
medication
out of
briefly.
that.
Right.
Yeah, like maybe you're so low that it helps you while you do all these other things that you need to do, and then you can stop taking the medication. I believe that there are occasional situations like that with students, but in general, I feel like children are way over medicated. I was actually reading this a psychologist that works with students and diagnoses different learning disabilities, and I loved what she said. She said, before I will actually diagnose ADHD, I first, or like offer a prescription or something like that, I first make sure that the parent makes sure that the child is sleeping the proper amount of hours they're supposed to sleep, getting the proper exercise they're supposed to get, and the nutrition is correct. You do those three things, and then let's talk about if the child truly has ADHD.
Right.
Right.
I so agree with that too.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they're drinking, blue Gatorade
Right.
with red licorice and Lucky Charms in the morning,
Right.
and you're feeding them all the sugar and dyes,
food dye.
and they're not getting proper sleep, and they're on a tablet all day long,
Right.
and then they're having some issues. Well, maybe we can look at some of these other things, and then like you and I talked about a little bit before this, a lot of their trauma can really inflame a brain and dysregulate your nervous system, which can also lead to symptoms of ADHD and
Exactly.
behavioral issues and learning disabilities. Because when your brain is inflamed and your nervous system is dysregulated, you really kind of aren't in the driver's seat of your own life. It's kind of on autopilot, and it takes over.
Right. No, the symptoms of ADHD, I don't know if people understand this, but the symptoms of ADHD are identical to the symptoms of early childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So
I have ADHD, ADD, and trauma, and CPTSD, and
which
PTSD.
is
So I was the chicken before the
And
egg, or the
14
egg before the
autoimmune
chicken,
diseases.
and I have 4 autoimmune diseases.
And you
which
still look that beautiful.
I will die on this hill that toxins and trauma equal
Right.
autoimmune
Totally.
disease, and people don't always. I have orange bottles after orange bottles prescribed to me,
Yeah.
from everything from ADHD medications to I had ADHD all the way to steroids to immunosuppressants to painkillers, Xanax, Klonopin, like
Oh, goodness. Oh, Lord.
Adderall, and
Yeah.
I was just like, what is all of this over the? And I said, I'm not doing any of this. And when you start to research how it affects your body long term and what it does to your gut, what it does to your brain,
yes.
all of these things, and actually can weaken your bones even.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And it ages you, and it makes your
know.
hair fall out.
I know.
And it weakens your skin, everything. And I'm thinking, what are we doing? And you're just
Right.
numbing it and
Yes.
covering it and
Leads
put
to
a
more
Band-Aid.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're not getting to the root cause of any of this.
That's right. It's hard. We live in a culture that is all about quick fixes.
Quick fix,
Right.
Band-Aid, just
Everywhere you
slap a
look.
Band-Aid on
Look
it.
at every diet is okay. How can I really quickly, without it
Right.
being painful, look like I want to look? You know,
Right,
and it's what society is teaching us. And I think we're just kind of like. And also, we don't want to do hard things. Like, I think it's just in our human nature to find the quick, easy way. But the truth is, the greatest change comes from putting in hard work. It just does. The greatest things that I've ever accomplished were hard.
I
There
agree.
was no quick fix. It required me investing a certain amount of time, energy, doing things I did not want to do. And then the result was so beautiful. It's sad because parents
builds
out of
confidence and mental
there you
strength,
go. That's what I was
right?
just gonna say.
sorry.
No, say it. Preach it. I'm with you. Yeah. Well, because you're right. This is the thing. We love our kids so much that we want to rescue them from pain.
Right.
But we don't realize out of our love, we're damaging their self-esteem.
Yeah, they're missing that key component of perseverance and confidence.
Which is where they gain that mental strength.
Yeah, Preston didn't always want to be in our program. Like, there are great fun days. We try to do fun things, but doing these exercises that you do with your brain, it's like going to the gym all day long. And there are days where you're like, this is boring. This is hard. I don't feel like doing it again.
You have to get 100%. Oh, like had 10 times. I didn't understand it until we all had to be sent home for COVID, and they had to come home with their computers. And I was like, what do they even do in there? And I was seeing some of the
Brain exercises.
brain exercises he had to do, and he had to do them over and over again and over and over again. But you could and you're like, does this really work? Is this
Yeah.
really
I
happening?
know,
Like,
is it really gonna
is it
change?
really? But then after time, you just see it's like you go to the gym.
Exactly.
And your
It's the
body
same if you go to the
changes.
gym. Yeah, in the beginning, you go and I've been through it over and over. You go and at first you're working so hard and sweating and you
Right.
do not see an ounce of change. Sometimes you gain weight and it takes
Right.
months and months pass and it seems
Yeah.
like nothing's happening, but change is happening and you keep going. And that's what built Preston's self-esteem was that you didn't
And had you not
quit.
done this, maybe he'd be a different child.
He might be.
He
Yes,
would.
he would
He
be.
would.
Isn't that crazy?
would be.
So
He
you're such a good
is.
mama for being an advocate for your
Thank
son.
you.
Yeah. Really quickly, for anybody who might not, because Lizzie and I understand neuroplasticity, and
Right.
clearly you do. But just in case anybody who is
Right.
listening or watching this, I find neuroplasticity fascinating, and
Yes.
somebody who, until we'll talk about this too, but because you're also a trauma survivor, who experienced an extreme amount of trauma, and then kind of like you said, I actually gained more confidence because I mean I was in the pits and honestly didn't even want to live at times when I was going through the thick of mine, because it was so hard. But once I got through it, and then I even went through some coaching programs so that I could help other people, started this podcast so I can help people, I gained so much confidence because I fought through some really hard stuff
Right.
and overcame it. And one of the things I came upon in my School of Hard Knocks, I call it, because I have a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, I like to say, because, I actually wanted to go back to school and get a license to be a therapist, but it was going to be 7 more years, and I'm a single mom, and I had people to help in those 7 years, so I decided to do coaching, and then I just go down. I read, and I read, and I read, and I research, and I watch YouTube videos, and I listen to podcasts, and so neuroplasticity was something I came across that I found fascinating. I did not know it was possible. I come from the thinking back in the 80s where your brain was what you had, and as a child, you were set with that brain for life, and that's what we used to believe.
Right.
Only in the last, what would you say,
30
10?
years,
Oh, 30
maybe.
even. Okay, well, I didn't.
I think it's more recent.
I would
like
say
that, where people are hearing
I learned about
it.
this 2 years ago.
Well, I think probably a lot of people have
Okay.
only heard about it in the last few years. But
Yeah.
it actually, about 30 years ago, there were people that were starting to figure
It gave
this
me
out.
hope.
More with
I
older-
said, I
Sure.
can change.
I
can.
know.
I thought I was
Right.
stuck with this. I mean, I experienced every form of abuse as a child, and then in my adult relationships, kind of set that blueprint forward and experienced abuse again, and then got sick and just the trauma. And I sometimes thought, there's no way out of this. My brain is just what it is. I'm going to be a mess for life. And it's not
Right.
true. You can rechange. You can
can
rewire
retrain.
your brain. They did a really incredible study with cab drivers in London who have to go through
Yes.
You know about that?
Tell that story.
Okay, well, okay, and then I'll have you, what I want you to do in your verbiage, explain what neuroplasticity
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
But really quickly,
Yeah.
they studied cab drivers in London who go through a rigorous testing. It reminded me of when my brother-in-law was studying to be a fire captain, or no, I'm sorry, it was a family. He was a firefighter. A family I nannied for. The husband was a firefighter and becoming a fire captain, and they have to study and know every
Yes.
street, every crossroad, every signal. They have to
Yes.
know. I mean, to
Right,
the
so they can get there in an emergency.
yes,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
have to know these maps. And so these cab
Maps.
drivers in London, what they did is they studied their brains before studying for this rigorous test that they have to pass to become a cab driver in London. And they studied their brains after.
Yeah.
And these are grown men. These are adults. These aren't children. And we're talking some of these men, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Your brain's firing.
And their brains after this study for this exam were like
Wow.
completely just fascinated, flabbergasted by this study. And
Right.
that's when they said, we can change our brains. In fact, mine and Lizzie's brains from this morning will be different after this podcast.
That's
Yes,
true.
From talking
Yes.
to you.
Say this. I know. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Right.
It's
Like,
topic.
it's like,
Language. I love it.
I love this stuff now.
We
I'm
do- we love
fascinated
it.
now. I like drink this
That's
stuff
why
like
you're
water
here.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please, will you, for someone who doesn't understand what the
Yeah.
concept is,
Yeah.
will you explain what neuroplasticity
Sure.
is?
I'm just going to say the very simple, the bottom line is just what you said.
Right.
It used to be that for a very long time, people thought we're just born with the brain we have.
Right.
And you just settle for
You
whatever
learn how to live with
weaknesses
it.
and strengths you have.
Yeah.
But about 30 years or so ago, there were doctors, different people that started to think maybe we can change our brains. Maybe our environment is actually part of what is going on with
Right.
our brains, right? And so neuroplasticity is basically our brain's ability to change and grow based on the input that we're giving it. And really, just like you said, every single day our brains are changing and growing for the better or the worse. So we talk about what we, helping these kids inside of our classrooms, that we're going to help change their brains in a positive way. The truth is, we're doing this to our brains at all times. Every single thing that we are putting into our body, we're looking at, that we're listening to. Our thoughts. Oh, we'd talk about that with the students, that we're our biggest bully,
Yeah, inner critic.
Yeah, our biggest, our
And that
critic.
sets neural pathways.
100%. So basically, if there is anything that you're not thrilled about with your brain, you can do things to change that. It isn't easy, but either was learning to walk or either was learning to ride a bike. But you put the effort in and you fell down and you tried again, you fell down and you tried again. And what happened is you developed new neural pathways when you did that. You try something new for the first time, a new neural pathway is developed. Now
And when
a
you
new
layer
language
it,
or
it's
something.
Yeah.
learning a new language is actually really good for your
it's
brain
really good
for this
for your
reason.
brain.
100%. Yeah. Learning anything.
A guitar.
You always want to be
Learning
And
an
they're doing
instrument.
this, but they're doing this with older people too, with Alzheimer's and dementia.
A
And
lot of
They
the
thought someone with
studies-
dementia had no hope, and now
Yes, or people.
stroke victims, things like that. So that's where they were figuring a lot of this out, where they would do brain scans at the beginning, do cognitive exercises with them, do brain scans, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, their brain has changed. And so yeah, you basically can let's say you have a new thought, like let's say that you think all the time, I'm horrible at everything. That's my default thought. A lot of us do this.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at everything. Well, and it's the reason why you keep thinking that is because there's a very strong neural pathway that is causing you that to be an automatic thought. But now I want to have a new thought that actually God created me just how I am and I'm loved. Let's say I want to think that, but that's hard for me to think that. It feels not true, but if I keep focusing on that, this new little baby neural pathway gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And the more time you spend on whatever it is, a new skill, a new thought, whatever it is, you're now making that neural pathway stronger, stronger, stronger until it almost becomes a super highway. There's actually something in the brain.
I like that analogy. It becomes a super highway from a little dirt path.
Yes.
To a little baby. But if you give up, it doesn't become the superhighway, right? If you say, I want to be good at playing piano, and you try it for a week, then give up, because it will be hard at first. Everything's hard at first. Yeah. So we can grow new neural pathways in our brain, strengthen them, and have a better memory, better attention, have better self-esteem.
Well, I've learned through some of it because of I had an anxiety disorder from a lot of the trauma. And so new neural pathways, I thought I was stuck with an anxiety disorder and I didn't want to medicate. So new neural pathways taught me, no, I don't have to be anxious and I don't have to be afraid. And is this a perceived threat or is this a real threat?
Yes.
All of those things. And so
And in the
we can help with
beginning, you
anxiety.
just learn about those things. Like you learned, like you said, from reading books, from videos, maybe go to therapy or whatever. You gain that knowledge, but that doesn't make it automatically
No.
change your brain.
I know, right?
You got to do the stuff.
You do. You get the do.
And I feel like in my own life, the way it's worked is because I came from early childhood trauma, which led into me choosing bad relationships, experiencing more trauma, and then making different choices. Well, that didn't take away the pain that came with it,
No, it just
and
distracts you
it
from
does.
it.
And so you're come out of all that with low self-esteem, anxiety,
And you
all
stuff
these
it
things,
other
and you
places.
stuff
And
it
it
to
got to come out at
survive.
some
Yeah.
point.
And the body keeps
Perfectionism.
score.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
School of
I
Hard
read that
Knocks
movie.
right here.
Exactly, right?
Well, I feel like in my life, as I've focused on change and healing and growth, the depression, the low self-esteem, that used to be the full glass, that has gotten lower, and the joy,
Wow.
the
Yes.
peace, the
Hallelujah.
security. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, that's why I love
But
Jesus
it's-
too, because
100%. Well,
he's helped me with a
he's-
lot of my glass
yes.
becoming full too.
That's
As
part
I've
of the
learned to
story.
accept who I am, as like you keep saying that you tell these kids they are who God made them.
Yes.
It's so important for them
Yeah.
to
and
know.
God
Through this dark
knew
time,
the
I turned my
you
life.
would have.
Yeah, how He designed me, the woman He
Right.
created me to be.
Yes.
right.
And He wants you to have healing, and
It's hard and sad that other humans' mistakes created a different, you know, not a perfect path, but it's okay. I feel like for me, God has opened the doors and I've worked my rear end off.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like I've seen amazing.
No, he has helped lead me to
healing
certain
and change.
people and certain books or certain. I feel like he's had his hand in that like teaching for me because I actually, if you want me to be completely honest, I'll admit something. I was on my hands and knees praying when I was sick and I had 15 illnesses. I have everything from non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, adrenal fatigue, Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, celiac,
through so
POTS,
much.
and CPTSD and dysregulated nervous system and disassociation and anxiety disorders. And so body dysmorphia. So I was on my hands and knees and I said, God, I need you to heal me. Like I wanted a miracle.
Right.
And he was like, no, I'm not going to take you over this fire. You're going to walk through it, but I'm going to hold your hand through it.
Right.
And it was a couple of years of healing and he led me to the right people. Sometimes I felt like, God put that podcast in my hands. Like he just led me to it or this book or this
But he
person.
gave you the hope that you
So
could
he gave
do
me the
it.
hope and he gave me the strength through it. But sometimes I kind of thought I was just going to get this like miraculous healing. And I never did. I really had to do the hard work. And I still am.
You're getting me choked up. I
still
actually
am.
years back wrote a blog. It's on my, separate from the school, I have a blog website that's all about trauma recovery. And I actually wrote a blog about, I forget the title of it, but that I'm thankful that God didn't rescue me. Because just like you,
I'm gonna choke up, yeah.
when you're in the middle of pain
maybe
and
he
trauma,
would,
I was
though.
begging God.
Yeah,
I begged God to you want him to just pluck you out of the pain.
And I had people pray over me.
Yes.
That I thought, okay, this person's an elder at a church.
Yes.
This
Right.
person has the mantle and the authority. So I'm going to be healed because they prayed over me.
Yeah.
And then I'd walk away and I'd be discouraged because I thought, God, why didn't you heal me?
Yes.
But now I can look back and say,
Right.
because look at what you did and overcame and you're stronger and more confident
Yes.
because of what you did over those
Yes.
last couple of
It
years.
actually all ties to what we're even talking about with neuroplasticity, because God created these brains of ours. And what God knows is that if he plucked me out of that horrible life when I was a child and just plopped me somewhere else, or if he took me out of an abusive relationship and just put me somewhere else, I would go right back into probably the same type of relationship. There would be no true change.
I was going to continue on
It's
that path.
you would
you.
not because you're a bad person. It's just you're wired for that, right?
brain was-
So what I figured out all those years that I was like, what the heck, God? You know, why won't you rescue me? Why do you let these people do this? Or why won't you, even problems I created, or I'm like, please just fix what I messed
Yeah, I
up,
know,
you know?
right?
But
I'm
he
sorry, I
did.
did it
He did.
again.
It's just not in our timing.
Right.
He knew,
timing is
he's
not our
like, I am going to heal you and change you and give you what he has done in my life is mind blowing. It's mind blowing, but it took time. I came from, I was totally born into poverty. I had very young parents. My mother was an alcoholic. My father did not want me. He flat out told me that. He tried to have me aborted. Oh, wow. So I was raised by an alcoholic mother. I had two siblings. We all had different dads. And by the time I was 14, I was on my own.
Wow.
I had to raise myself at 14 years old.
Did you always believe in God? Or did you
You know what's interesting is I do feel like God, I felt like I sensed something was there all along.
Okay.
But by the time I was a teenager, I was mad at God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
was
been
like,
through that.
why-
I've been like,
yeah,
he
if
must
you're
not love
there,
me,
then
or-
why
Exactly.
did-
That's why I didn't understand.
Yes.
same.
By 14 years old, I had lived in, I lost count, but probably 50 different houses.
Oh my goodness.
I never went to the same school in a year, and I had to drop out of school. So that's the beginning of
here you are.
and here I am. I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in special education. I started
Someone
a
who
school.
went to, dropped out of school. You know
Yeah,
what?
I could barely read when I was young because of all the trauma. It wasn't about intelligence at all. It was about the
No, it
life
was
I
your-
came
because
from.
you were
But here's
traumatized.
the thing.
Wow.
We're not victims of our circumstance. So I can definitely preach
victors.
that, is that
Yes,
we
amen.
can overcome anything. So there is no life that you've been born into. There's nothing that has happened to you, no abuse that has happened to you, nothing you have done that is so messed up that you cannot have a good future and a good life. God has given me an amazing husband. I've been with my husband
I'm so happy for you. Okay.
Me too, thank you. Because I went through, because of my childhood, I chose very unhealthy, destructive, abusive relationships because I was just doing what felt normal.
Well, so this actually I've learned has to do with our brain.
Yes.
That our brain goes to what it knows. It will choose a comfortable hell over
Yes.
a new heaven. Is that correct? I mean, because
Well,
Would you say
certainly
a comfortable hell?
and you take the love you think you deserve. That was in a movie, some Wallflower movie I saw once, and and no, no, he said there was this quote that Paul Rudd he says in this movie. He says, "Yeah, we take the love we think we deserve." But no,
Yes.
you're right. And then,
Wow.
but there's something, and I am still I'm going to be a little vulnerable right now. So I went from a home that these relationships I went into repeated, right, and so now I've been trying to just be single and heal and recover. And then when I do kind of tiptoe into dating now, I am. It just seems it's that same type, and I'm like, okay, no. So now I see the red flags, and I go back. But why is that still? Why is that still such a pull? Is that my
And then
brain?
you get bored.
Yes.
And then you get
Yeah.
bored with a healthy relationship.
Exactly. So if I wasn't
this
in
is a
an
little
abusive
too-
relationship, the other people were boring. I will tell you, I actually met some very nice guys and was in a relationship with some nice guys, but I do think that felt boring.
Did they like me too much?
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you, good job listening to your gut, and wait, because when you meet the right person, the person God has for you, you will know.
Yeah, I pray.
I'm God couldn't have blessed me more because I ended up, my husband he's a professional musician, and so he looks like this heavy metal guy, but he's such an amazing Christian man who treats me with
you
so
guys
much
choose God
respect
together.
and so much kindness, and he didn't want anything from me but a friendship, and we talked about Jesus together and all the good that God has done in our lives, and we became best friends, and we have such an amazing, happy relationship because he tries to be who God wants him to be, and I just try to be who God wants me to be, and together that works.
That's the ticket right there. Yeah.
So it's possible. So if you just have
So I'm wondering though, is there neuroplasticity, brain training that I can do that trains you to? Well, so I see the red flags and I run, and I know this is not good. I don't
You gotta
want it
keep
anymore.
doing it.
Yeah.
But it's hard. I'm still working on being attracted to a really good, godly, nice.
I think you're still healing.
That is hard.
You know.
Yeah, you do need to make sure to give yourself time to heal. It's hard because we're lonely and we are built for
No, I actually like being alone now.
Yeah. Almost do we like to be alone?
No, now I'm like, everyone leave me alone. Just want to be with my kids and my friends because I just, So.
Well, I felt like that too, and I actually thought, because I had gotten out of a very long-term abusive relationship, and I thought, I'll never be with anybody, and I just want to be alone.
Because I feel safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was proud of myself that I finally realized I need to teach my kids that I realized that if I didn't leave the abuse,
Yeah.
And you had children.
I was afraid they would marry people that treat them that way. So I knew I needed to stop the cycle. But then I was like, but I'll never trust anybody, and I'll always be alone. And within 2 years, the way it worked too is I actually just started taking guitar lessons. God knew how to
You play the guitar too?
Interesting.
no.
Oh my gosh, what else does she do?
All my kids do, and my husband's amazing, but no, I was going to. But then I had to actually get a real job, and so I didn't have time to practice guitar. But God just created a safe environment where I would see him for 30 minutes a week, and we talked.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of a nice,
I like that ease
Yeah.
into it.
and the friendship, the way it started with the friendship, that's so beautiful.
Yes, I think that's focus on friendship, because that's the most important.
It's almost like there's this energetic pull from, I feel like, and I'm going to use some buzzwords here, but this codependent, narcissistic, they just have this inner polarity that just pulls up like magnets, it's like a
do.
moth to a flame.
do.
And it's like,
It's this crazy dance. I know.
it is. It's this dance that we do. And I'm like, okay. And then, you see these people that are very attracted to very good, honorable, people with integrity and they're a good Christian woman or man, and then they're just kind of drawn on them. And sometimes I felt like, God, you gave me the blueprint for toxic abusive relationships.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel frustrated because what felt so comfortable to someone raised in a really good healthy home feels comfortable with a good healthy man.
Yeah.
And so I
Well,
get frustrated.
ultimately, part of the process of healing it is we cannot trust our emotions a lot. You know,
Your feelings aren't facts.
Your feelings aren't facts. And there are times where you can love and be attracted to someone, but you have to logically decide this is not a healthy behavior. Because it's not like when I left the abusive relationship that I didn't feel love. And actually, times where I kept feeling drawn back.
Oh, I know, that's
It
the
was, I
trauma
had to
bond.
Yes.
And you're addicted to that
Yeah,
whole push and
yeah.
pull situation.
Yeah.
I had to say to myself, what would God want for my life?
So you're training your brain
Do the right thing, do the right thing. At the end of the day, just keep doing the right thing.
because it's training your brain.
Training your brain.
And I can say your emotions shift. It's just that at first you have to not go with the emotions.
Like when you cut sugar out, you still want sugar, you still want sugar, you still want sugar, you still want
Yeah.
sugar.
Still want it.
And then after a while,
Yes.
you stop wanting sugar.
Yeah.
It is so
or in
true,
the beginning,
right?
like you don't want to work out, but then you start doing
That
it.
is
Like,
true,
I
too.
love
I feel
it.
good.
It
I
makes me
feel
good.
yeah,
Yes.
and I look.
I always
good
say
too.
going to the gym and going to church, you kind of fight it. You don't really want to go, but you always are so glad you went after.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
you always
totally.
feel
It's
so
the
much
same.
better.
I think it's the same thing. It took therapy and reading all the books. You're doing all the right things. I did all those things, and I'm sure it won't be until I'm in heaven that I'll be fully healed. But I can just say that it gets easier the more I invest in the positive as opposed to the negative stuff. You know.
Yeah.
And speaking of all this trauma, it does tie into what we were talking about with the kids. You know, we were talking before we started.
Yeah, sorry, I like to derail a lot.
No,
so
I do that too.
okay.
Go
Like,
back
we
to
could
the
probably,
kids.
yeah,
People
have
deal with
5
all
hours.
these things, though. It's, you know, a
No,
lot
it's
of
true.
families are dealing with all of these
Well,
things
and the
too. So
reality
They do all
is-
tie together.
it goes,
Here's
yeah.
the thing too.
Parents need to understand that working on themselves is actually one of the most important things they can do to help their child. We're all dealing with this stuff. We're all a bunch of broken people, you know, and sometimes we focus too much on other people and not on our own stuff. So probably the best thing you can do as a parent is
Work on
Because
you.
you're the
what is going on
example.
with me? Why do I keep rescuing my child? Why do I keep choosing abusive relationships? What is going on? And because they're watching and they're experiencing. I wish I could say they don't, but they do.
They're watching more than that they hear.
And yeah.
And what we do is more powerful than what we say.
Absolutely.
They do what we do, not what
Absolutely.
we say.
Yeah. They're following us by
Yeah.
example.
So it's important. And then I was going to say that one of the things I came from this trauma, and I have this, you know, the narrow road, the other blog that I'm doing, but I didn't realize that the two would connect, the school and the trauma recovery. What we discovered with the school early on as children were enrolling is there is a very common theme that a lot of the kids in the program had some form of early childhood trauma. And they're the things that are like easy to identify, like a major abuse that everyone's acknowledging.
Did you see that more in ADHD and ADD or in a learning like disability specifically, or did they just
All
work
areas.
together?
It all
Okay.
works together.
Because the trauma response is fight, flight, or freeze. So it could look different how it comes out.
Right.
The fight ones we're probably labeling as ADHD. The freeze ones, they have dyslexia because their memory is low. I don't, you know, like they're being labeled with different
And when you
things.
look at each one, they're
Right.
different, but they're all a
Yeah.
trauma response. And basically, it's whichever one you fall into. Usually, there's two that you fall into. Because I'm a lot of fawn and freeze, and a lot of ADHD. You know, so the different ones can be fight or freeze or flight, whatever.
Fight or
so,
flight.
but what it basically, so I
flight.
wanted to figure out, well, why do some people go? Because even codependency and narcissism, they're a childhood trauma. But why did one go this way and why did one go that way? So I was trying to figure it out. And what I kind of came to is it seems to be that whatever helped them survive in their home when they were little. So if you were able to get your needs met by screaming and being really aggressive, then a lot of times that's what you
Right.
resorted to. If you resorted to fawning and people pleasing and, you know, whatever makes you, then that's how I was able to survive in the household. So that
Or
was
if you
kind of
manipulated and it worked,
If
then
you
you become a
manipulated your
master
parents
manipulator and you get older.
Yeah. I don't know. This
also a
is
bad
like if I had a whole other life to live and I could like do research, this has always been a
It's so
fascinating-
interesting.
It's
Because I
fascinating,
have, I
yeah.
told you I had
Psychology.
3 of us siblings.
Oh.
The other 2 have passed away.
Oh,
And all 3 of
wow.
us went different directions in our life. And I've always thought, why did my oldest
Go
brother become an
Wow.
addict?
Yep.
He was dead by the time he was in his early 20s.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
My younger sister passed away not too long ago.
And
I'm so sorry. You've really had
So they're all so traumatized.
I know, but the truth is, for as many traumatic, sad stories I could tell you, I have more
Beautiful stories.
good
stories
ones.
of triumph
Hope.
and
hope
Right.
and what God has done and
Victory.
hard work is done, and so all these things.
Because it is interesting to
The
me
pain
why
and
one
the
goes one
joy-
way and one goes the
yeah,
other.
it is
Right.
fascinating.
It's, and birth order plays into it
Yes,
and what
yes,
you had to
there's
do
all
to survive and all of that. So
But in the students that I work with, the traumas could be things. I think this is also where parents need to try to work past the shame and guilt because
Because they hold on to
Yeah,
it. They're like, oh, it's
okay.
my fault.
Right, but no, everyone's just
Right.
doing the best they can.
yeah, if
Right.
you're doing the best you can, don't
look what
worry.
I put my kids through.
Right.
My kids have lived a hard life. I wish so much that I tried to be the best mom I could be, but I
you're-
tried to not be my parents. But
That's exactly what happened.
but the
with me,
problem
too.
is you can only be
Right.
use the tools you have.
Yeah.
And my kids went through trauma and they went through divorce and they went through hard things. And you know what? The character it has built in them is beautiful.
Yeah.
If I had we think if we pave this perfect, beautiful, easy path that we're going to make perfect, beautiful children. No, that creates little narcissists.
No.
Right.
They have to
No.
learn how to fail. And they
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
learn how to mess up and
That
get back
life
up,
is
dust
hard
it
and
off.
It's not
Perfect, and you cry it out and then you try again and you can feel mourned. Like there are times where I cry about
Right.
not having the family
It's one of my biggest
Yes.
heartbreaks is there's a chapter in my book is the heartbreak I have for my kids and the regret and the guilt I have that they didn't
Yes.
get this
I
perfect
have
little
mom
white
guilt.
picket fence and
No.
the perfect mom and dad with the cat and the dog
Yes.
and the mom and dad that
no.
gave each other a kiss on the cheek as they went out the door. Like
Right.
that's the Christmases and the birthdays
Yes.
and we have this divorced, broken family and that's
really
something
hard on
that I
kids.
struggle with guilt and I struggle with heartbreak over. Like
Right.
even if I
I-
didn't want to be with my ex-husband,
I
I
know.
still just regret
Right.
the not having that family and not giving it to my kids. I feel like
Right.
they didn't deserve any of this. And that's something that I've shamed myself and I struggle to really
have that mom guilt
fully let
too.
go
Yeah.
of.
I'm going to pray that God totally heals you of that because I've always struggled with that too. But the reality is you did the best you could, and that's beautiful.
Right.
That's
And I hope my
beautiful.
kids know
And
that. I love them more
they
than
will.
anything
They
in the
will.
world.
They don't
and-
know right now. It's
I
okay.
think they do, but
But
I
even
have
if they
apologized to
didn't-
them. I'm like, I'm sorry, your
Me
life's
too.
kind of
I
messed
know,
up.
I know.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry you went through the divorce. I'm sorry you went through the guy after my divorce and we lived with him. We had to move out and
Yeah.
we moved here and we.
But
I'm
you were
sorry.
doing the best you could.
And they're like, it's okay, Mom. They're really sweet.
You've done the right thing. That's exactly how you be a good mom.
I'll be like, I'm
Right.
sorry I
You
yelled at you that one
apologize.
time. And
Yeah, you got to communicate
like,
with
Mom,
them.
I don't even
Yeah,
remember
it's
that.
okay to make mistakes.
And say you're
Right.
sorry. You teaching them that is what's going to give them a good life. I'm telling you,
Right.
everybody's got drama.
Yeah.
All those white picket fences.
Yeah.
There's
There's
going
something
on
behind
behind
them
those.
too.
Yeah, there's
I
all
know.
kinds of
I
stuff
know.
going on.
And when you learn that, you kind
Yes,
of
no Satan just trying to hold you down and
Right.
hold you back by trying to convince you to feel
That's
guilty. about
right.
that is true because
That's
shame
so
never
true.
comes.
I
From
needed to
God.
hear that.
It's
Yeah,
true.
thank you.
It
It's
is
true because
Yeah.
shame. Actually, I read this once. Is shame never comes from God.
Right?
Yeah.
So
he
it's,
does-
the
it's
opposite.
coming from the adversary
the
because
opposite.
shame
It's a
will hold you
sin
back and
to
it
feel
will
shameful.
it will hold you
Absolutely.
back absolutely from
Yeah.
becoming who you're meant to be
Right.
because
Every
shame
mistake
is
you have made
shame
is
sticks on you like a
paving-
wet blanket.
Yeah.
Right.
But these mistakes those are the things that are going to teach you to be the person God wants you to be.
Because
Right.
God
Okay.
uses pain for
Right.
your
Yeah.
purpose, and He uses, your test to make your testimony,
Yeah.
and
Right.
your greatest, mistakes
Yeah.
will become your greatest witness.
Yeah.
Well, parents need to understand that these type of things do, like divorce, all
They
these
happen.
things.
Yeah,
These traumas
regardless,
happen.
the
It's
kid's going to
okay.
be right here, and going back and thinking about the shame and worrying about what we didn't do or did do.
Yeah.
The student is right here. The child is
Yeah.
here and it has to move forward regardless. So us wasting that time and feeling shameful and not dealing with the situation
Exactly.
is just doing it worse.
Or let me buy him a bunch
You're
of
making
things.
it
Yeah.
worse.
Somehow like make life all happy and good
Yeah.
for them. You're making it worse.
So you
Someone
would tell
told
a
me
parent,
today.
I would say it's okay. Go
Right.
ahead. What were
No,
you-
someone told me today before I started this, they're like, maybe you shouldn't say anything about Preston. I said, why wouldn't I? Said,
This
first
might
of
become
all,
something he advocates for other
exactly.
people for.
It's something that's going to help other people,
Yeah.
and he is just a living
he
testament
should be
of it.
proud of that.
Absolutely, Preston
Yes.
is
He
though.
overcame
He doesn't
it,
shy
and-
away
yes.
from it.
Yeah.
He
Einstein
tells
Einstein didn't talk
people-
till he was 5.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Einstein didn't talk
Oh,
until he was
yeah.
5.
Yeah.
He
And
didn't
he's-
speak until he was 5,
I
and I
just-
think he didn't
yeah.
walk until...
No, he did everything delayed with Einstein,
Yeah.
and
Well,
he's
and
one of
I
the greatest
see
inventors
there are a lot of
ever.
kids that
Come through our program who they've been adopted by loving, kind
Yeah,
parents who
right.
have invested. They're chosen. Like it's beautiful, and the parents are doing everything right and beautiful.
Right.
But that early childhood trauma,
No matter
and
what,
maybe
there's
it was
trauma with
even in
adoption.
utero.
Because,
It could be in utero.
too much cortisol levels in the mom, whatever it is.
And there is head trauma. Baby
Yeah.
could have fallen.
Could have.
I mean, 'cause
There's
that
so many things
happens.
that could happen. Early medical condition, or
Yeah,
there's
right.
so many different things happen that puts your brain into fight, flight, or freeze mode,
Right.
which prevents the ability to learn.
Right.
You know how it is when we're going through our traumatic things.
And
How's your
maybe
memory
a
doing?
Baby being,
Right,
maybe a
absolutely.
woman giving up the child was maybe one of the most loving things she could have done at the time.
Exactly.
But there's
Everything
still
was done
trauma
right.
because
Right.
a baby is being separated from the
Right.
mother,
Yeah.
and there's just going to be trauma with that no matter
Exactly.
what.
So
Could be
owning that and
generation.
Being like, it's okay. This happened. So here's how we let's go. You know, the psychology behind it, and how can we help the child's self-esteem grow, and as opposed to deny it or cover it up.
That's the
and,
thing, because the secrets you keep will keep you sick.
Right?
That's
so when
true.
you stuff them down, that's one thing I learned.
Yes,
You can't-
that's true.
I preach that to the kids. I'm like, the only way to get healing is truth.
So true.
And it's okay.
Authenticity is the highest
Yes.
frequency you can have. Honesty, truth. That's what I learned too, because I pretended like I had the perfect little family growing
Yes.
up, and I would pretend like I had a perfect marriage and life.
Yeah.
That
And
breaks my
that
heart.
Would make you. That's actually how
Because
you
little
stay
kids
sick.
do that. They
Yes.
pretend. Oh,
I
like
did that to my kids.
yeah, I have. We have a friend in another state, but the mom isn't there anymore and hasn't been for years. And when the little boy would be like, "My mom makes the best spaghetti," and like whatever, and he never even had his mom's spaghetti. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
They
So
just
he's-
create
I
these
have
creating a
stories.
fantasy.
like that, where
Right.
they- yeah.
So they're
They'll make up
creating a
stories
fantasy.
and-
Because
yeah.
they're creating a fantasy in their head.
That's so sad.
And it's so sweet, isn't it? Like,
Well, and you know what is so upside down is that we come from early childhood traumas. Things happen to us. Even if you didn't have a traumatic childhood, maybe you had a perfect childhood, but you were
Right.
bullied by someone in school, or someone made you feel bad.
there's always something.
It creates, there's always something.
Right.
We've
Well,
all
You
gone
have
through
a sibling
something.
with a
Yeah,
medical condition.
exactly.
That can create trauma in the other.
Exactly. There's all different things. We're
There's kids
hurt
with
somewhere
cancer
along
who
the way. We all
sibling
get hurt.
suffers some
Right.
trauma when the sibling had.
Right. So this stuff happens to us. It's automatic and natural that your self-esteem is going to suffer, that you're going to feel afraid, that you're going to have, different fears and stuff. Yet culture tells us something's wrong with you if you're insecure or afraid or
Right.
So it's really
Right.
upside down.
Absolutely.
So then we
They make you
spend all
think
this
something's
time
wrong with
trying to
me.
pretend like
I'm okay, so I don't look, insecure.
Right.
But it's actually would be something would be wrong with you if you were. Like,
Right.
how would you
Yeah.
be secure coming from that?
Yeah.
And it's okay.
And it actually makes you more relatable when you're
Yes,
open.
true.
People are like, "Oh,
Exactly.
okay, I can talk to them. I've got this too." Everybody's got something.
Yes.
It does. It makes
Pain-
you human.
Every human has pain.
Because we're all human.
And that
Yes.
perfectionist thing is just another trauma.
Every,
is.
Every
Right.
family that we have
Worked with.
Right.
They're good people. They all have done everything right. They've all tried their best. They, like I see people, money isn't the issue. Love isn't the issue.
right.
It's, we're all just doing our best, and that's all you can do.
Right.
And it's okay to own that you need help. That's a huge thing, is to own that we need help is okay. As opposed to, let's try to fit into a box, be in denial, and now you get them through high school, and now they actually have to go off and be an adult.
Well, that's scary because if you're not dealing with it, then they might be getting into drugs,
Exactly.
or they might be
They
getting
will
into
numb.
all these other
will numb
things,
it.
right?
They will
That's
numb it.
that's what I was worried about. I was like, we got to handle this now while
Yes.
he's
'Cause
young,
the person's gonna
because
turn to
and getting them,
self-medicating.
yeah, and
Yes.
getting it into a program in the teenage years. Forget it. They're going to be
Right.
already so angry, and I mean, it works, but
Yeah,
still,
they
it's
won't-
harder to do.
Right.
they won't respond as well as if
Right.
they're little. So, what's the best age? Like, well, I guess it depends on each child, I suppose.
What were you
I was
Right.
gonna say, like, what age would you recommend?
The age should be as soon as
Just
you know.
whenever you notice it?
Yeah, like our program, we start at first grade
Okay.
because at that point
Right.
they can usually sit, to the best of their ability.
Yeah, take direction.
And know some
Right.
numbers and that type of thing. Yeah, and work in a small group setting.
But what are all the different? And there's dysgraphia, dyscalculia. So what dyslexia? Then there's dyspraxia.
Yeah.
So what are all the different ones that you work with that you see?
All of those.
And that's in writing and speaking.
Yes. So all of the traditional learning disabilities, auditory processing, huge. We see that almost combined with almost all of the different learning challenges. And it's hard because a lot of times these kids come in and they've been given this label. I've had multiple kids come in. I'll ask them to write. I know, and it's a good to know the truth. That's not bad. As long as you don't give yourself the label and then you say, therefore I can't.
Right.
I've had kids say, "Oh no, I can't write because I have dysgraphia."
They took that
Oh.
label.
I'll be
They
like,
came
"Oh,
into
yeah, you
agreement
can."
Yeah,
with.
you can.
Right?
We're gonna erase that. You've seen
Exactly.
the eraser on the back of the pencil. We're
Yeah,
gonna.
let's try.
Yeah.
Because what if you can? That's true. You have
Right.
that. Let's change it. Like
Yeah.
It'd be like if you said I can't walk, so I'm just going to crawl the rest of my life.
Right.
No,
like,
well, let's work on it.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we see the whole combination.
Okay.
In our program, we do work with kids with mild autism who are able to work in a classroom setting. We're real conscientious about not having students who have been formally diagnosed with a behavior disorder. I wish I could work with everyone. So this is a
Right.
hard thing because let me say there's hope for everyone. So you can change your brain no matter how low your challenges are. So do cognitive exercises no matter what. But as far as like putting together a school where you're going to try to have a similar type of group of kids, we had to have certain boundaries.
For it to be successful.
Successful, yeah. So we don't have kids with diagnosed behavior disorders because those students maybe will just be too disruptive.
Yeah.
We're definitely.
It's so
patient.
sad though because
I
the
know.
really,
It's all
really
heartbreaking.
bad behavioral issues, I will die on this hill, are probably stemming from some things
Right.
that they're screaming for help.
Totally.
Right.
Some of the kids I've bonded with the most are some of those kids where, because I know that that gets me choked up thinking about it because they're trying so hard to be rejected.
Yeah.
They don't feel lovable. And so they're going to keep being bad enough until everyone tells them they are.
Right.
And so trust me, those are the ones I want
What's
to love
that
the
called
most.
again? Your brain will affirm your thoughts. It's something like that, right? So you will kind of keep getting yourself into the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, I know.
You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about?
Yeah.
So if you believe you're
You
going to be
believe-
rejected,
Yeah.
exactly.
You believe everything you tell
I watch
yourself.
it.
You're
over
going to
and
be
over.
rejected, so they'll push till
Right.
it keeps.
They will.
happening.
We see it. I totally see it. And
That's
that's
so
why
sad.
it's so hard. But in my perfect world, I would have.
You'd have another room for
here's
those
this-
ones.
Exactly. And
I
here's the
know.
autism, kids with autism, more severe autism. I totally would.
Right.
There's just only.
There's only one of you,
Yeah.
and
But we're lucky we have you here in California. But we have people that watch and listen to us all over the country, maybe even in the world. And I don't know, across the country, do you know of other schools that do a lot of neuroplasticity? I mean, is this a widespread thing yet? And this is why it's so unfair.
what would you have them look for?
Well, there really are not a lot of schools doing this. That is why we created foundations. We were like, but I can tell you what we're doing.
Well, if they can afford to
We're
move out to
actually-
California,
yeah,
Orange County,
there
I'm
are some
Schools across the country.
world
Let's list it
that,
up.
in
Zoom
different
or-
countries. It's usually bits and pieces is what you're seeing out there. There's a lot of schools that obviously offer tutoring or the academic component. My concern is
not enough.
the hard drive is broken and you keep trying to cram the software.
Yes,
like, okay,
right.
5 more hours of tutoring and
Yeah.
everyone's crying and
Yeah, I
you
know.
so
like you're
it's
learning
hard.
Spanish on the side, but
Yeah,
you still
yeah.
have to go to school and do the regular stuff.
Exactly.
It doesn't work
And
that
these
way.
poor kids, all day long at school, I say to parents, it'd be like if you had to go to a job that you were failing at.
but you had to go
And you
every
couldn't
day.
quit.
Right. Well, because
You
if
know,
you're
it's
struggling
horrible.
with reading, how are you going to do? This is how I knew. because Preston was
are
great
you
at
gonna do any of
math.
your homework?
Yeah.
And then we got to word problems, and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
That real problem.
Exactly.
But how are we going to do history? How are we going to get into math?
Yes.
How are we going to do, this subject,
All
this
the other
subject, this
subjects
subject?
pile up. That's why as they get older,
Yeah.
the behavior issues happen, because to do the science and history and that type of thing, you have to be able to
can't
read
do
and
it.
write well. So we got to resolve that, which you got to go lower. You got to handle memory. Well, I'll tell you what we're doing is, so the school has now been running for 8 years. We've seen unbelievable change, life-changing things happen. So such a blessing that I've been able to participate in this. A lot of this, that what we've developed has been manual, paper. We do have some things that we do on the computer as well. But we're currently in the process of developing a portal where all of this will be online.
That's
and we
wow.
are planning to have it available, because my dream is to help.
I know.
Before I'm gone,
Everyone.
I want to help everybody that needs
Yeah.
help. And so our long-term vision
So it might be
is
able to be
to
accessible.
have this be everywhere.
That would be
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's coming.
Yay.
Yeah.
Stay tuned,
Yeah.
everybody, mamas and papas.
Yeah.
That's right. If you're listening in
Yes.
Arkansas.
Right?
But if your
Yeah.
kid's struggling and not necessarily going to go to one of these schools, or
Right.
maybe
Or
you
it feels
can't afford
mild.
to,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
are there a couple things that we can do to exercise our kids' brains and help make them, whether it's a little more mentally strong or
Yeah.
overcome maybe some things they're struggling with a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like because even kids who don't have learning challenges.
My son has no learning challenges.
well-
Right.
But he struggles, like, where I see him struggle the most. So maybe I selfishly asked you this question, but I want to help everyone with it.
Right.
So learning, no problem. He's over grade level, so he's smart and bright. But he's the one that I'm getting the call that he's talking out of, talking to his friends in the back.
Oh, that's
and
Kingston. I got one of those.
I'm just like, what is wrong? What are you doing, right? And then there's that. He's the
think
kid
boys have
that's
a hard
throwing the
time.
ball over the fence at recess, and they're like, why are you doing that? And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Right.
why are you doing that? You're a good kid. You got
Right.
good grades, but they're calling me and saying, you're the kid kicking the ball where it shouldn't, and talking in the back of the classroom with your friends, goofing off. And then in baseball, he plays a lot of baseball, and his dad's, baseball is a big part of his life. So these two questions are kind of probably why I selfishly asked you that, but everyone can learn from it.
People can relate.
When he doesn't pitch well, or when he doesn't hit well, he will let it. I can see it in his demeanor, his shoulders. I see it in his face. He looks like he's going to cry. He does cry sometimes. It's so much pressure for an 11-year-old, and I think maybe because his dad was a professional athlete, and I think that he feels this intense
The
amount
bar
of
is
pressure.
up here.
Wow, yeah.
And so I just see him crumble.
Yeah.
And I see him get in the car and say, I suck. I can't even, I'm not hitting good. I'm terrible. And I say, we don't say those things. And so, yeah, that's what I'm dealing with. And if those are some things where I can help him create some neuroplasticity and brain
Right.
health in
Yeah.
those areas.
I was actually just looking at on the foundation's website. I actually have a bunch of blogs about.
I got to
all
go read your
different
blog.
topics.
Yeah, well, there's one
Right.
in particular
where I talk a lot about the teenage brain and the fact that
Gosh, that's going into this
yeah,
tough territory.
he sounds very normal to me. It sounds like everything sounds right on.
on. Like,
He's a boy.
Yeah, I
Boys
think
learn
one-
differently,
well,
though,
he's
right?
a human.
He's a
Yeah.
human.
You
He's a
actually,
boy.
one thing that we have to remember is that these children grow and their bodies grow, and at some point they almost look like adults.
Yeah.
Their brains are not fully developed. You know
Yeah.
that the prefrontal cortex does not fully
Yes.
develop until you are in your 20s.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first of all, change your expectation that they're going to be perfect and thinking logically, because
They're not.
no. And I love the idea, there's this whole movement of like letting your kids make decisions and that type of thing. I think you definitely want to involve them in decisions. But we, as parents, the most loving thing we can do is help them make good decisions, though. Their
Right.
prefrontal cortex, we cannot have them make adult decisions
Right.
when they don't have an adult brain.
Right.
Their main way of making decisions is based on feelings.
Yeah.
So acknowledge that, love them, get their thoughts, but expect them to be goofballs. They're gonna, I feel like one of the best advice I can give to parents is don't rescue your kids all the time. Like we talked about earlier, it's damaging their self-esteem.
You're robbing them
They-
of an opportunity.
Yeah, if he
them
makes a
grow.
mistake at school and it causes a detention, great. I'm fine with that. Like if that happened to my kid, I'd be like, oh, good, you got a detention for doing that goofy thing. You served,
Right.
And it's okay. I'm not going to overthink that.
You've got some
It's,
consequences.
yeah,
now.
it's in our human nature to push the boundaries. Like this is him just hormonally and psychological, like brain development wise, he's probably right on target to do these things.
Well, that's good to hear.
I think more parents need to hear that though,
Well, it's
because
true.
I feel like
Yeah.
that too sometimes with Kingston.
Like,
He's
oh,
a lot like
no.
Nixon, and then I'm just like, wait a minute, is something going on with him? And
Yeah, like, why is
is
my
he
kid being a
acting up?
troublemaker?
We always have to
mean-
label something. We always have to find the
Yes,
answers, and it's like
no.
he's just a kid. These
Yes.
kids are just kids.
I mean, and now like obviously watch
if-
for extreme signs.
like he's
If
burning
Yeah.
down the school or something.
Yeah. You start seeing
but teaching them that failure is okay and that it's actually the key to success. The most successful people have repeatedly failed. Yeah, and so instead of him, with my kids, I'd be like, let's cry it out. That sounds like it was you pitched horrible. It's true. And cry for a minute or two. And then what did you learn from it though?
Right.
And what are you going to do better next time? Or different, not better, just different. And,
Right, different.
try 1,000 different things. Just don't give up. You need to, and don't rescue them because you're reinforcing
That's
that
the
he's a
biggest
failure.
one.
You see, so you have to like not try to, and also I think a huge mistake that we make, and I'm love my kids so much. So we all say, well, I just want them to be happy. Happiness is just a fleeting
Right.
feeling that
Right.
comes and goes. Some days you're happy, some days you're sad. If you're chasing happiness, you're never going to ultimately
You'll
be
never be
happy.
happy. Yeah.
What we want them to have is good character, resilience, to know that God created them perfectly how they are, but we're not settling for the areas where we're flawed, like we can actually grow and change. And try to encourage getting them around good group of friends that encourage those things, those good habits, remind them that everything they're putting into their brain is changing their brain. So if you're listening to rap music all day long that has swear words and negativity,
true.
you're brainwashing yourself.
It's true.
But if you're listening to, and I'm not saying that, I tell the kids, I love all types of music.
Right.
And sometimes you need to listen to that.
crazy
I
stuff.
know. It's fun.
Yeah. Right.
But then worship music instead, and positive things that you're feeding into your brain and getting off that social media stuff. So psychologically I recommend that, but then really 3 things that all parents really should focus more on is exercise. How little exercise do our kids get nowadays? And by exercise I mean like 20 to 30 minutes a day of like sweat. It's sleep. So many humans, but our youth are sleep deprived. We're
Go
not.
to bed at night, but then they don't want to get up in
I
the
know.
morning. They're like, I don't want
It's a
to.
battle.
My son, the other day he was like all down in the dumps, and I'm like, and if your first thing is like, oh my gosh, are you depressed? Yeah, like, what? And then all of a sudden I'm like, how much sleep did you get last night? Because I bet one good night of sleep, you feel so much better.
Oh, yeah.
And it's literally sometimes we make the worst lifelong decisions on temporary emotion.
How
Definitely.
terrible do we feel when we don't sleep right the night before? I feel
Exactly.
terrible. I can't do it. Like I'm just like,
Exactly.
I'll do this tomorrow. I can't
Yeah.
make this decision right now.
Parents need to take it serious. I know it's hard. I think it's like we're all in survival mode, so we're doing fast food. Just let them have their phone because they hate our guts if we don't let them have it. And the social media, you give them all these things, and unfortunately, it is damaging them. It'd be like if you're putting sand in their gas tank, and not putting brake
car's gonna run
fluid.
down.
Yeah. So you really need to take serious. Teenagers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
On average, they're getting maybe half that.
I know, right? It's,
So their memory is not going to work.
They're gonna
and he's
have-
always fighting me to stay up later. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
I know.
That's where you have to do the right thing.
it
It's
down.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a good parent.
It is.
It really is. It's hard. You know what I found? It's really hard to discipline.
Yes.
It's unnerving. It takes a lot of energy. I do a lot with
It's harder to
co-parenting
be
with
a
Christian, and we have to make sure we're on the same track because they'll play each other
Yes,
against us.
yes.
They'll play us
They're
against
smart.
each other
They
too.
know how.
They know how to do
They're
it.
doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it really takes a lot out of you, and it's hard to take their phones and their bikes away because then they're in the house and they
In a
can't
bad
be on their
mood, and they're
phones.
mad at
They're
you.
grumpy and miserable.
Yeah.
They don't want to do anything else, and they're mad. Yeah, they're mad at you, and and then you have to entertain them sometimes doing whatever, and they
You're
don't
just like, here.
right, and they don't want you to
I
entertain them.
know.
They go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
Oh yeah, they're at the age.
But you
where-
have to stick to your guns.
You do.
Really?
And you got to figure out like what it's tapping into for you. Because me, as a
Right.
codependent and coming from trauma, I want everyone to be happy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
And I think
hard.
everyone being
Discipline
happy
is
around
hard.
me is, my job.
Equals, yeah.
I
And I'm
feel
finally
like that
attuned to
too.
each of their shifts and moods.
Right.
yeah. So it's taken me getting healthy and doing things that don't feel good to me
Right.
to help them be.
Because I was kind of codependent as a mother too. I'd be like,
Right.
oh, let me take that pain away from you. Oh, let me
Yes.
make sure you don't have
Yeah,
to
of
struggle.
course.
I don't want you to struggle.
Yeah.
So-
I think that
Yeah.
that's our human nature as any mother and parent, but especially if you struggle with.
I saw myself doing a little, and as I learned and as
I
I
definitely
grew,
did that.
I saw, I need to,
Yeah, it's hard at the school. Everybody's kind of on different levels and lessons that they're doing, and our goal with every level that they're working on, like let's say that we're working on brain speed and attention with some cognitive program. Our goal is to keep them at a level that is not too high for them, so it won't crush them, but it's challenging enough that it'll cause them to grow.
Right.
And you're constantly trying to find that balance where they'll have growth. And it might be in that moment they're telling you, no, it's impossible. And you might even see a little tear sometimes. But when you know it's possible, the best thing I can do is let them feel that way momentarily, because the beauty that comes when they conquer that level,
Right.
I could not have done that myself.
Right.
If I had made the level easy,
I'm like, oh, let me just do it. For
they
you.
wouldn't have.
You see that in discipline too. You
Yes.
know, like, I'll say, okay, no video games. No video games for the next week or 2 weeks or whatever, and they're angry and mad for the
Yes.
first couple of days, and then all of a sudden you see them doing board games
Yes.
or
Yeah.
puzzles or reading
Yes.
books, and you're like, oh.
And getting
Look
along
at
with
these
each
kids.
other
Yeah, look at
and,
these kids. Like
Yeah.
being creative and using their imaginations and going outside
Yeah.
and doing all this stuff. So it does work.
It
It's-
does.
Once you get past that pain bump, you really see that growth.
Yeah.
the parents that I see working with their kids where they are more setting the boundaries,
They
pushing
want
them
boundaries,
to,
I think.
those are the kids I feel like I see experience the most growth. The kids who are
Right.
more rescued repeatedly,
Yeah, I heard that.
they don't have as much growth because
No.
they feel helpless. It's that learned helplessness.
Yeah.
You know, you've read about that.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of kids that aren't disciplined, those are the kids that end up having all the problems in their late teenage years, and
They
they
almost
end up in
want. They're almost
drugs.
saying someone discipline.
They
me.
want
Yeah.
boundaries. They don't think they do.
No, they do.
But they do want boundaries.
Exactly.
But deep down, they're kind
And
of
that's what they're
screaming.
pushing
Right.
for, believe it or not. They would never say that's what
Right.
they're pushing
Right.
for, but no, there's whole
Or you're
books
still gonna
on
love
this.
me if I do this. You're still
Yeah,
gonna love me
yeah,
if I do
yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's true. It's like the toddler who's out of control screaming and you need to help them contain.
Yeah.
Children weren't born with the ability to self-regulate, you know?
Right.
They learn that from us.
Right.
And so,
Co-regulation.
yes. And just because they're a teenager doesn't mean they got it down. If anything, they're going through,
It's like
Because
toddler
now they're
years
dealing
again
with
in a
like
giant
hormones
body.
and
Well,
yeah.
now they're dealing with
Right.
things that could kill them.
Right.
you know, when they're
Cars
little.
and
Yes.
drugs and-
Drugs and
Yeah.
what's
That's
happening
really scary.
online. And like parents need to take it serious.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's hard. I've fallen victim to it myself, where you just want to be in denial because you don't want to think could be that bad, but it is. There's a lot of bad stuff out there, and we have to help them in a lot of ways. You know, my kids, I can say coming through it, because now almost all of my kids are adults. Two of my daughters are getting married this summer.
Well,
My daughters are
congratulations.
marrying brothers, by the way.
No way!
No way.
How fun!
That's
crazy?
so cool.
Holidays are gonna be great.
I know.
How
But
fun is
I know,
that?
They're pretty awesome, and but I'll tell. And these kids of mine, they, like I said, I if I could choose, I would have chosen a different path for them. It hurts
For
me,
sure.
Yeah.
Me too.
but who they are and the character that has come from all this pain, like I've told you, is so beautiful, and they're making good choices now, and they know how to overcome hard things. And my one daughter and I were talking about this not too long ago, where she said, "Thank you that you said no to some of these things. Like,
Yeah.
thank you that you
Yeah.
seemed like not the cool mom for periods of time,
Because
because
you left me.
Right.
yeah, and it was hard though. If something flies out of the mouth, they say they hate you or something
Oh,
in that moment
gosh.
because you took the phone, or
I know.
you know, like
It
they
hurts.
literally,
It's really
yeah,
heartbreaking.
that's my worst fear. Yeah,
know.
but
Yeah.
And the same with any kind of issue going on, you have to do what's best for them and their long-term future, not the current level of happiness.
I'm realizing that with a tween and teen years. I had like good control when they were younger, but now
Yes.
I'm realizing that I am happy being cringe. I've now entered the cringe. Mom, you're so cringe face. And now,
about that. Our
first
boys
I
tell
was
us we're
like,
cringe.
first I'm like, I'm not cringe. What are you talking about? You have a great mom. Now I'm like, I wear that badge of honor. I am cringe.
I'm
Go to
so
your
cringe.
room. I am cringe.
Yeah, no, I'm totally not the cool
Mom. But I love them and I try to do and teach them by example.
Yeah.
What we've overcome is teaching them more than anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Teach 'em grit and resilience,
Yes.
right?
Right?
The greatest superpower.
Because the world
Yeah.
is tough.
You say that grit and resilience outweighs education
100%.
and
Right.
100%.
status and all these things. Yeah.
You know, and I'm reading this book, Boys Should Be Boys, and I think I posted it on my stories. There's a whole chapter on the God factor and how
Oh, I saw you post
even
that.
more than any other thing, they've had like big tests done that knowing that there is a God above, a creator, is something that kids learn when they're young, is something that is more powerful than anything
Right.
that they could have, like any other.
Well, we need purpose.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing, you know, and a lot of the things you read is that you can make sense of all the pain if you believe there's a purpose in
behind
it.
it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think this is all by accident and I don't think that's just weakness or, you know, there's people who say that like, oh, you just want to believe in God because it's a
No.
weakness. No, it's true. I can see it. Like I've actually seen the miracles. I've seen what he's
Same.
done. And
I know
If someone
that.
could go measure my brain from before and now, and my brain would look different. I know
I'm
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
the
I know
power
God
of
is
the Holy Spirit.
You can't.
totally.
Well, there's a. What do they say? There's a God-shaped space in all of our hearts that only He can fill.
Yes.
yes.
So.
And that's what's missing in so many things nowadays is that we're trying to take that out of the
right.
schools.
Why do you think
We don't
everyone's
feel the
depressed
need-
and
I know,
anxious?
we don't feel
Because
the
we've
need
taken
to-
God out of everything.
Out of the
and
Pledge of Allegiance, out
Yeah.
of everything.
Out of everything. And focusing on things that don't matter. Emotion based.
Exactly.
Do whatever makes you happy in that moment and then they're all like confused later.
That's
you
all
know,
kids
like
need to hear.
yeah.
Do what makes you happy.
I know.
no, don't
I
do.
know.
Don't
How
do what makes you
dangerous
happy.
is that?
What makes me happy is to lay on the couch every day eating ice cream.
Right. I mean,
Right?
Yeah, but yeah.
And then they have these little devices that are literally the windows to the world.
I
Yeah.
know.
How and it's like they
scary.
could be
It
so
is
it's
very
so
scary.
scary.
sometimes I wish we didn't have.
I wish.
I remember this is gonna prove how old I am, but I remember getting the AOL plug-in like where the internet was coming into my house.
Oh right.
I had a little
And the ring.
baby. Yeah, boo, yeah, dialing in.
I thought it felt not right. I was like, the outside world is coming into my home and my son is going to have access to that. Okay, that just reminds me. Speak about trauma. There's studies that talk about that. Kids are exposed nowadays by the age 10 or 11 to porn, to like gory, disgusting things.
And that
We
will
don't
change
even
their
know
brain.
that they're all trauma response. You could be a perfect parent, but if they're looking at that in their bedroom, their brain does not
Have the ability
read
to process
studies.
it appropriately.
I've read studies that porn and some of the gory, scary stuff it will change their brain.
It does.
change their brain.
does change their brain.
And twist things. And it's really sad. So then they can't function in school. Of course they can't.
Right.
Because
They
they're
don't even know what to do with that.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. I don't know if we could turn it off somehow. I wish we could. That's a
well,
whole
and it opens
whole other podcast.
a whole other podcast. I know it's a whole other
Put
podcast.
all the controls you can on your
Yeah,
kids
we
on your kids' phones.
Yeah.
All the parental controls. Try to take as many if they can't get
Yeah.
apps. I know Kingston's
Well,
phones.
because
he
this is a
can't get
whole
anything
nother
on there.
podcast too, but
Yeah.
it opens you up to demonic,
Oh, totally.
attacks.
And
So-
outside people that are influencing their life more than you.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it does need to be. Parents need to take it very serious.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. This was an incredible discussion. I'm so grateful for you taking the time to do this, and I hope that it really can help parents and, and kids because
Absolutely.
they need that hope and that encouragement and to know that there's answers, And so
Yeah.
I think sometimes for me personally, when I can make sense of something, it helps alleviate a lot of anxiety for me.
And not feel alone.
And not feel
Right.
alone or discouraged
Yeah,
when I
you're
can
not
understand it. I think some people, I'm known as like a researcher. I'll research things, right? Because I didn't go back to school. And I think that started because I'd be anxious about something. And so for me to understand it, I needed to go research it.
Right.
So hopefully this gave some people some answers. And but to end though, can you tell them what's the name of the school, and where can they find your blog?
Yeah.
So where can they find you and all this wonderful information that you have to offer?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun to talk with you guys. Like I was saying before, I think you guys are amazing, and I'm so happy you guys are doing this podcast. I think you're going to totally give people hope and change lives. And yeah, you guys are. And as far as where to find more information about like neuroplasticity, brain growth, and learning disabilities, they can go to our school website, foundationscognitive.com.
Okay.
And my personal blog, which focuses on trauma recovery, that's thenarrowroad.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.